You step into an elevator. Someone gets in behind you, and before they say a word, your body has already made a judgment about them. Not from their face, not from their voice, from their smell. You don't even notice you're doing it. There's no conscious decision, no moment where you weigh the evidence. It just happens, underneath your awareness, the way your heart beats without asking your permission. Your nose has been running a background check on every person who enters your space since long before you had language to describe what it was doing. Here's the number that should stop you. The human nose can distinguish over 1 trillion distinct odors. Not thousands, not millions, a trillion. For most of human history, that trillion-odor sensor wasn't a party trick. It was survival equipment. And it was reading a world that smelled almost nothing like the one you live in now. In this video, we explore what your ancient ancestors actually smelled like, what the world around them smelled like, and why the version of clean you believe in today would have been unrecognizable and possibly even dangerous to them. Before makeup, before status symbols, before spoken reputation could travel faster than a person could walk, smell was information. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer societies have long noted that body odor carried real social data: health, diet, even reproductive status. A sick body chemistry smells different from a healthy one, and a body that had recently eaten well smelled different from one that hadn't. Researchers studying the major histocompatibility complex, or MHC, a set of genes tied to immune function, have found that humans can subconsciously detect genetic compatibility through scent, and tend to be more attracted to the scent of people whose immune profile differs from their own, likely because it produces offspring with a broader immune defense. Your ancestors weren't sniffing each other for fun. They were reading a biological resume nobody had to write down, updated in real time. Impossible to fake. Modern life is built around a sealed layer between you and everything else. Clothes washed in synthetic fragrance, skin coated in product, air-conditioned and filtered. Ancient humans had no such seal. Their skin carried the oils of the animals they'd hunted, the smoke of the fires they slept beside, the crushed plants they walked through. A day outdoors wasn't neutral. It left a residue, and that residue told a story about where you'd been and what you'd survived. The controlled use of fire, which researchers date back at least 1 million years based on burned bone and ash deposits at sites like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, didn't just change what humans ate, it changed what they smelled like, permanently and completely. Constant proximity to wood smoke would have soaked into hair, skin, clothing made from hide, and the walls of any shelter. You couldn't wash it out, because washing, as you understand it, didn't exist yet. Smoke is also a natural antimicrobial, which means it does more than mask other smells. It actively suppresses the bacteria that create them. Communities that smelled like fire may have, without knowing it, been slightly protected from the microbes that thrive in damp, smoke-free environments. The smell of char wasn't dirt. It was closer to a shield, one that every person around that fire wore, whether they'd chosen to or not. You have roughly 2 to 4 million sweat glands, and most of them are eccrine glands, producing mostly odorless sweat whose entire job is cooling you down. But you also have apocrine glands, concentrated in the armpits and groin, that produce a thicker, fattier secretion, one that only starts to smell once skin bacteria get to work breaking it down. That timing is not a coincidence. Evolutionary biologists believe apocrine sweat evolved specifically as a chemical signal, largely dormant in childhood and switching on at puberty, tied to mating and territory marking in other primates in ways that closely mirror what scientists observe in humans. Modern deodorant culture treats this as something to erase within minutes of it appearing. For most of human history, it was something other people were meant to detect, and something your own body spent millions of years perfecting the delivery of. Predators leave scent trails. Prey animals leave scent trails. A hunter-gatherer's nose wasn't a passive organ sitting quietly in the middle of the face. It was an early warning system running constantly, whether its owner was paying attention or not. Field studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups, including the Hadza of Tanzania, documented extensively by anthropologists such as Frank Marlowe, show trackers using scent alongside footprints and disturbed vegetation to read where an animal had been, how recently it passed, and whether it was wounded and therefore vulnerable. That skill required a nose calibrated to a much wider, messier range of smells than yours is today, because yours has spent a lifetime being trained on air freshener and printer toner instead of urine markings and crushed grass. The nose you have is the same hardware. It's simply never been asked to do that job. This is uncomfortable, but it matters, and skipping it would leave out half the picture. Decomposition, illness, and death were not sanitized behind hospital walls or funeral homes the way they are for you now. They happened in or near the living space, close enough to smell, because there was often nowhere else for them to happen. Anthropological and archaeological evidence of early burial practices, some dating back over 100,000 years at sites like Kafze Cave in Israel, suggests early humans developed deliberate burial partly as a practical response to this reality. Covering the dead reduced both the smell and the disease risk of decomposition nearby. Every early burial you've ever read about as a spiritual milestone, a marker of emerging human consciousness, was also, quite literally, an early public health decision made through the nose, long before anyone understood what a pathogen was. You associate clean with the smell of nothing, or with manufactured floral and citrus notes designed in a lab and tested on focus groups. That association is startlingly recent, far more recent than most people assume. Historians of hygiene note that soap as a regular personal cleaning product only became widespread in the last few centuries, and mass-marketed scented soap and deodorant are largely 20th century inventions, driven as much by advertising campaigns as by any genuine leap in health science. For nearly all of human history, clean simply meant free of visible dirt or dangerous residue, not free of natural human scent. Those are two completely different standards, and collapsing them into one is a very recent habit. The absence of body odor you now consider basic decency, something you might apologize for lacking, would have struck an ancient human as strange, maybe even suspicious, like meeting someone with no history written on them at all, a blank page where a person should be. Long before an infant can see clearly or recognize a face, it can recognize a smell. Studies of newborn behavior have shown that infants just days old will reliably turn toward a pad carrying their own mother's scent over an unfamiliar one, and mothers, in turn, can often identify their own infant by smell alone after only a brief period of contact. Researchers studying this bond describe it as one of the earliest and most reliable channels of recognition a human being ever develops, active before vision has sharpened and long before language exists at all. For ancient mothers and infants, separated from the modern conveniences of formula, cribs, and constant visual contact, that scent bond wasn't sentimental. It was often the mechanism keeping a vulnerable infant correctly identified, fed, and protected within a group. Anthropologists studying tight-knit, small-scale societies have documented something modern city life rarely requires: the ability to detect an outsider by scent before any words are exchanged. Diet, environment, and shared living space all shape a person's baseline body chemistry over time, meaning members of the same group would have developed a rough shared scent signature from eating similar foods and sleeping near the same fires. A stranger from a different valley, a different diet, a different fire, would have smelled distinctly different. And that difference itself was information worth acting on, long before anyone could explain why. Here's what actually changes the picture, and it's the part most people never stop to consider. Your olfactory system hasn't evolved much since then, not in any meaningful way, not on a timescale that would matter to your daily life. You still carry the same trillion-odor capacity, the same apocrine glands quietly switched on since puberty, the same subconscious MHC detection your ancestors used to size up a stranger before a single word was spoken. What changed is not you. What changed is the environment you're pointing that ancient sensor at. Instead of smoke, sweat, and crushed plants, it's parsing synthetic fragrance, sanitized air, and, more often than anything else, the deliberate smell of nothing at all. That elevator judgment you made without noticing? That's not a modern instinct dressed up as intuition. That's a 100,000-year-old survival tool, firing exactly the way it was built to fire, just in a world that gave it almost nothing real left to read. You'll walk into a room today and your nose will do what it's always done. Quietly, instantly, without asking your permission. It will read the air and hand you a verdict before your conscious mind even catches up to what just happened. Your ancestors trusted that verdict to tell them who was safe, who was sick, who was kin, who belonged by the fire, and who didn't. You mostly just trust it to tell you whether you need to switch elevators. The tool never got worse. It's just as sharp as it ever was, running on the exact same ancient code. The world it was built for is simply the part that disappeared.